Hi, I'm the Sad Panda, and this is going to be the next episode of my series, I Read This Should You, and just like I said, it was going to be on Gregor the Overlander. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this as concise as I can make it without going overboard, but you know how I get, so I don't know how long this video is going to be. So let's begin with Gregor the Overlander, what it's about, and who the characters are. So our main character is Gregor, as you can probably understand by the title of the story. He is a kid, I don't know how old he is, they don't really say. I'm pretty sure he's like 12 or 13, but I'm not sure. That's not really all that important. When you go through the story, it doesn't really matter all that much. All we know, the age for certain of, is Boots, which is another character. It's a side character that is also with the main protagonist for 99% of the story. She's also 2 years old, and she's like a toddler. She's Gregor's sister, and, you know, Gregor, okay, so the story begins with, we meet Gregor's grandmother. She has, I believe, Alzheimer's, I'm not sure, but she has begun to forget things, right? And it kind of takes her back to when she was younger, and she calls people by names that they aren't and stuff like that. It's a very sad bit of the story that I don't know a lot of kids, because this is a story targeted at kids, would really understand. But that's understandable because, you know, that's not where most of the story takes place. We do know about the mother of Gregor. She works, I'm pretty sure she works all the time during the summer, so she needs someone to watch Boots. And because her grandmother is, or her mother is out of it, she can't really trust her to watch Boots, right? So Gregor, instead of going on his like camp trip that he normally goes on during the summer and his dad usually watches Boots, he's the one that has to, as his dad has gone missing like 2 years prior, right? And so as an adult, the first thing I assumed right away was that two things. One, that either the father just skipped out, which is the most reasonable thing I could understand, or the father is dead somewhere, which is also a realistic thing, but obviously the story is made for children, so there was a third option that I thought maybe, you know, because this Overlander goes somewhere and he's called an Overlander and then he finds his dad, which, you know, the story isn't all that complicated to guess, right? I did a lot of that during the story. I would read a couple chapters, then I would guess what was going to happen next, and most of the time I'm right? I've read a lot of books, so it's not hard to understand. So Gregor and Boots, they have a loving relationship. They're brother and sister, so obviously, you know, he loves her very much, and she can't talk very well, but when she does talk, it's usually really cute and wholesome. It's a very wholesome interaction between Boots and Gregor, right? And Boots isn't her real name, obviously. Her name is Margaret, but she's called Boots, and it's explained in the story because of when it's wintertime, the little girl likes to steal people's boots, which, you know, it's something that, you know, you do. Like my little sister, I have a little sister, when she was really young, she would cry for no reason at all, and her face would turn pink, and everyone called her Pinky. That's just what it was a thing. Her name is Jocelyn, if you were wondering. Anyway, so the story takes place in this, like, in New York, and they're in like an apartment, and you know, it's a fine time. You know, the mom's gone, obviously, grandma's there, a babysitter's showing up, and I'm pretty sure Gregor and Boots go downstairs to do some laundry, right? Because if you live in an apartment, like I live in an apartment, there's like a communal laundry room, right? And it's not like my apartment has laundry rooms on all floors, I'm pretty sure, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not certain. Anyways, they have to go to like the basement to do some laundry, and Boots ends up going and falling through like an air duct that's like making sound or whatever, and the little girl falls into it. And obviously, Gregor, being the person that he is, just dives right after her to try to catch her, right? But he also falls in. Now, this is where we get the reason why he's called an Overlander, and there's Underlanders, and we'll get to them in a moment. So he and Boots are falling, and he feels this air, so he doesn't feel like he's falling as fast as he should be, right? And anyone who's fallen a pretty decent distance, like if you've jumped off swings or whatever, you fall pretty fast. And he's, you know, he's a smart kid, so he understands that he's not falling as fast as he's supposed to because there's just like air current that's pushing him up. So eventually they land, and Boots is fine, he's fine. They land very softly, actually. They walk around in the darkness for a while, and then they see these huge cockroaches. And I'm not talking about huge cockroaches as in like they're as big as my hand. No, I mean like they're large enough where like an adult man could ride on one. So he's obviously scared, right? But he, you know, puts on a brave face for Boots, and he doesn't go to fight, but he does like try to like take her and run away. And these cockroaches can talk, right? They speak like broken English. They're not the smartest, but they're not dumb either. And Boots obviously is a child, so she's not all that scared, right? Because a lot of times kids aren't very scared of things that they should be scared of, right? And she apparently loves bugs. That's something that is touched on a little bit in the story, and she like gets along very well with these bugs. Tick and Tack are two bugs that we'll get into later, but they are one of them is part of this group, right? And so they get taken to a group of people that call themselves humans, and they're very pale. The way Gregor describes what they look like is if you were to look at like an anatomical like picture of a person, right? You can see like the veins and the muscle, and you can see all that stuff under the skin because that's how pale they are, right? We get this whole like interaction between Gregor and this like warrior princess queen woman, right? And she's obviously around his age, and I think that's like the love interest for these, like the book story, right? Like obviously it's not like a love interest at the beginning, just like if you read like Percy Jackson, right? Annabeth and Percy get together at the end of the series. It's not a thing until like 4 books in, right? It's just something that you can kind of see the tension. It's not like all there, but you can see it a little bit. But this is someone that reads a lot of books, and I can notice like a lot of like subtle stuff when the writing. Now I assume that I didn't read the other books, and I don't think I will, right? But let's continue, right? So they go to this like city in the Underland, and he's called the Overlander, and Boots is called a princess repeatedly. I don't know where that comes from. So I think it might just be like a cultural thing, right? Because there's like a lot of like a cultural thing in the way that the main female character, I literally don't remember her name. I told you guys this before. I'm bad with names. Unless it's the main character or like a secondary character that's with them 90% of the time, I'm not going to remember. So anyways, they have this conversation, and Gregor finds out that his dad was here at one point. And he's like, oh, well, and then I got to go find my dad or whatever. Is he dead? Because obviously he's smart enough to understand that this dark, damp area, right, that is pitch black unless you have like flame torches, it's dark completely. There's creatures that are out to kill Overlanders for sure, like the Gnars, I think they're called, but it's just rats, and like the Spinners, which are spiders, and it's pretty easy to understand. Now I'm gonna talk really quick before we go into like the rest of the plot of what I think is actually happening with the Overlanders and the Underlanders, right? So a lot of the story kind of leads you to believe that this is like just a world under the world, right? But what I have been led to believe is that it's not like a world under a world, it's just our world, right? But smaller. So I assume that when you fall through this air duct or when you get to the Underland, you shrink. And it would make a lot more sense, right? Because otherwise the amount of air needed to slow a young teen's fall would lift like a 2-year-old up, right? The same amount of wind that could keep a young man from reaching terminal velocity would lift a 2-year-old up. That's all I'm saying. So I assume that there is like some magic to this world, which would make sense because bats in real life can't talk, rats in real life can't talk, bugs in real life, from what we can tell, can't talk, and like obviously. So I'm led to believe that it is like a shrinking of some sort because like the animals aren't smaller, they're just, the people are. And the animals are smarter, so I just assume that it's magic of some sort. Obviously, I don't know for sure because it's only the first book. I'm pretty sure it's a whole series of books. And we'll talk about that as we get through the story. So Gregor and Boots, Gregor tries to escape at one point, right? Because he's scared, obviously. He's a young guy and he wants to get home to his mom because he has Boots, and Boots is a actual child, and he's worried about what could happen in this kind of place to children. So he tries to escape through like a water duct in like a bathroom, right? Because it's like they have hot springs and cold springs, that's how they get hot and cold water, and then it floods into like a river and then it goes downstream. So he knows that he can get out that way, and he ends up getting caught, or he gets caught, but the reason why he gets caught isn't because he's not like stealthy, because he was pretty stealthy with it, right? The reason he gets caught is because of the Gnars, right? These rats. So in this Underland, the rats and the humans have this like complicated relationship, right? Where they were once at like a quote unquote peace, right? Where everyone has like, it's just not war, right? It's just like a tenuous like peace where like, I won't mess with your people, you won't mess with my people kind of thing. And then this new rat became the king of the rats, and he hates humans, and now they're like at war or whatever. That's just the backstory you need to know about this, the rats and the people, the humans. The Underlanders, I'm gonna call them, because from the way they're described is just like how, you know, Gollum from Lord of the Rings, how he's like super pale and emaciated. That's how I imagine them. It's obviously, it's not like that because they're described as beautiful people, which is understandable. But I just like, whenever I think of like people underground that live there forever, I always think of like those like night elves that are like super pale and like they have the black eyes, or I think of like Gollum. So that's just what you get. That's what you get from that. Anyways, so he meets these two rats, right, that are going to eat him and Boots, because he obviously took Boots when he tried to escape. And instead of running in fear or screaming in fear, whatever like normal humans would do, he instead tries to reason with these rats. I'm gonna call them rats. And he like stalls for enough time for him to be found by like the princess girl that we talked about earlier, and like one of her cousins, Henry, I believe his name is. And the reason why I remember his name is because he's a very prominent part of the end of the story. So he gets saved or whatever, and he gets brought back, and everyone's mad at him because he almost got a bunch of people from the Underland killed, these humans killed, and he also got like these bats killed. So something that you also need to know about the story is that bats are a huge part of it as well. These Underlanders, they create like bonds with bats and like to life, like it's almost like a marriage, right? It's not, obviously it's not a marriage, but just that's the easiest way I can describe the bond. It's like you will protect this person until you die, and they will protect you until you die. It's like a warrior bond. And they like fly around on those, and it's easy to get around because bats don't need the light to see, and the humans do need the light to see, and it's this whole thing. All right, so they get really mad at him, like the kingdom of this Underland gets really mad at him because like a bunch of people almost died, and the bats got really wounded, and obviously they care a lot about these bats, right? But it turns out that they're not that mad. The reason why they're not that mad is because they think that Gregor is a warrior from prophecy, the prophecy of the Grey, right? Made by Bartholomew Sandwich. Yeah, it's good. Anyways, Bartholomew Sandwich was apparently one of the first people to enter the Underland. And in doing so, he has a bunch of like prophecies and things of that sort that he wrote down and have come true. So people like take his word as law almost, right? So the prophecy of the Grey is like about Overlanders and like Gnars and spiders and all this stuff getting together and saving, like on a quest of some sort, right? The quest is obviously it's not described in the prophecy, but they have to go on a quest, and out of the 12 people that go on the quest, only 8 will survive. So 4 people will die on the quest, and the 4th person that dies on the quest will like make the biggest decision of who will live and who will die. That's like the whole thing. And so obviously I made this guess really early when he fell into the Underland. I'm like, how much you want to bet? I was going to the gym, and I read all the time when I'm at the gym and stuff. And I was like, how much you want to bet that somehow, some way, his dad's alive, and the quest is to go get it, to go find his dad, right? And lo and behold, that's exactly what it is, to go find his dad with a bunch of like cockroaches and spiders and stuff. And so they have to go on this quest through the Underland, which is just this deep, dark, like sewer, right? Essentially, that's what I would call it. And it's where we meet that's where we meet Tick and Tack from what I explained earlier, the 2 cockroaches that really take a liking to Boots. And they do this like ritual dance with Boots. And it's really, apparently it's like a cultural thing that cockroaches rarely do for people that aren't like cockroaches, right? It's like super special because Boots has like this affinity for animals from what we have been able to tell in the story. That happens, they go and see the spinners, right? The spiders, and they get captured, and the spinners actually are going to work with the Nars. They're going to give the people to the Nars, but they escape. And in doing so, the rats, the Nars, attack the spiders and pretty much ruin their kingdom. And so they send like 2 spiders to go and help them, and one of them dies. One of the quests is dead. Boom. Because that's just that's how they interpret it. Like, they have the 12 people and like the rat, and speaking of the rat, right? Okay, so they have a character named Rip Red. His name is Rip Red. He's like a war hero rat, except for he's not a hero because he doesn't like the new ruler of the rats. So he thinks he should, it would be a lot more advantageous for the rats to work with humans, which obviously it is, because we have those opposable thumbs and we can make tools and things, and rats cannot do that. Although they are stronger in this Underland, they're stronger, and they could probably kill you with a flick of their tail. And I say probably because it happens when Rip Red literally uses his tail to like cut off another rat's head, like, and then he like rips the throat out of another one with its teeth. So obviously they're very strong, a lot stronger than the people. And they go on a quest. It's Gregor, Boots, 2 royal family members, which is the queen lady, or the princess lady, and Henry, which I'll tell you why I remember his name in a second. And then it's the 2 cockroaches, the 2 spiders, and the 12th person is supposed to be the dad that he saves, and then the rat, right? So that's the whole group. So 1 death already. Tick and Tack, the 2 cockroaches, one of them ends up dying, which is pretty sad. It's actually one of the most memorable parts of the story for me, is that whole interaction, right? Because they get ambushed by a bunch of rats, and they have to just run away and try to escape, and one of the cockroaches risks its life to save Boots, because Boots wasn't on his back at the time, because he has this like backpack thing that he wears with boots in it, so he can like move around and still like operate as a normal person. And like as he goes back to try to save him, the one of the cockroaches doesn't do that, and it dies, and it's very sad. It's a very touching moment, right? And so that's boom, 2 dead. I don't remember the 3rd death because it really was kind of insignificant, if you ask me. But the 4th death, which Gregor, and I also was convinced that it was going to be Gregor, which obviously, it's not that I was convinced that, because I was told by the person that recommended this book that it was a series. So I just thought that if I were reading this for the first time, that would be, like, if I didn't know there was any other books, that would be my thought process, that the 4th person would die because he has to make this like big decision, and he's considered the warrior, so blah, blah, blah. And he has to, they get into the like fortress of the rats, right, to save his dad, because that's where his dad is. He's like making weapons and stuff for the rats because they can't do it himself, and it's a whole ordeal, right? So they go and they like release the dad, and it turns out that Henry is a double agent, double cross, bam, bam. Just like Rip Red is a double agent, except for he works for the people, the humans. Henry is a double agent, but he works for the rats, even though he's like a royal, like, he's part of the royal family. He's a cousin of the princess, so he's like very prominent, like royal, like blood, right? And he hates weakness, apparently, right? He thinks that rats have a better way of seeing things because they don't tolerate weakness either. They kill weak people, and that's what he wants to do. He tries to assassinate Rip Red a couple times in the story, and Gregor stops that from happening. And so that happens. So he like rats him out. Get it? Rats him out. Anyways, he narcs. He's a narc. He like, when they get into the fortress, after they save the dad and they're getting ready to leave, Henry's like, well, I gotta do this, and he whistles and calls up a bunch of rats, and the new king of the rats, his name is Gorger, I believe, shows up, and there's this like small fight, right? It's not very big, between Gorger and another rat, it's kind of just to show you how powerful he is, right? Because if Gorger killed like one of the party members, then it's be like, oh, that's the 4th one, and that would be it. So obviously that didn't happen, but instead he like just like rips the head off a rat. Like, in a show of like strength, because he was getting laughed at because Henry accidentally stepped on his tail, and like the other rats started giggling, and he just ripped one of their heads off, and he's like, who else wants to laugh? And like that's how you get like the notion that he's like a big evil guy. And obviously they have to show that because, you know, it's a book made for children. But all right, so it goes on, and Gregor's like, all right, I'm gonna lead them all away, and they follow him because obviously he's the quote-unquote warrior of prophecy. So obviously they try to save him, and Henry is like the first person to like follow him and try to chase him. And one of the lines of the prophecy is he doesn't look before he leaps, and death may or may not come or something like that. So he has to like jump off a cliff, and whether he lives or dies is like in fate's hands. He's like, well, I'm gonna either die here or not, and that's it. And so he jumps off the ledge, and he's followed closely by Henry, and obviously Henry doesn't know that there's a cliff there. So he jumps off, and there's no one to save him, so it's just him and Gregor falling. And this bonded bat named Ares, which was Henry's bat, right? Because they bonded, didn't know that Henry was working for the rats. And in this like revelation, Ares saves Gregor instead of Henry, which is a big no-no to the bond. The bond is you will protect this person, and it doesn't matter why they're dying or anything. That's your job is that, and just like their job is to protect you if anything was happening, right? So Gregor gets saved by Ares, and it's this whole like moment where he's like, I didn't know, and it's like, obviously you didn't know, you would have saved him if you did, like that whole thing. And they save the dad, and they get back, and it's like, oh man, after Gregor died, Gorger died, because he was also falling behind, and he jumped off the cliff as well. The hierarchy of the rats kind of crumbled, and so they had to retreat on their like war efforts. And so it gave them like time to push them back and that kind of stuff. And so Gregor saves the day. The dad is found. Boots is okay. It's literally the perfect happy ending. He's going to get sent back up to the Overland so he can like talk to his mom, and his dad's back. So it's like, oh, this is great. And they try to do this like cliffhanger thing where it's like, you didn't know? It's like, we'll see you again sometime. He's like, no, I'm never coming back here. That was Gregor's like words. And apparently there's another quest or another prophecy that has like the warrior, which from this point forward is Gregor, will like, it's like the quest, the prophecy of the bold or something like that, which I'm not gonna move forward and read it. It's not because I don't like the story, because I think the story is very good, and for the reading level I think it's all right, you know, it's not bad. I just think that it's just wishy-washy, you know. And I'm not gonna lie and say it's the best thing I've ever read, which it is not, unfortunately. But it's not bad. It was good enough for me to finish it, right? So I'd give it probably like a 7, right? I like some of the characters. I like Rip Red, right? I was told I would like that character, and I do. I like he reminds me of like the soldier, like in the soldier archetype that like he's really gruff and mean, but it's not because he wants to be. It's just that's who he is, and that's who he was like brought up to be. And he's actually really soft and nice on the inside, but it's just like you got this like rough exterior, which in this case is a rat exterior, which is hard to overlook as like a person, right? And I really like that kind of archetype, and I think that's really cool. Gregor as a character, I think he's very passive. That's one of my issues with Gregor, right? A lot of the story, he's not like an active protagonist. He's a passive protagonist, and he doesn't move the plot forward. The plot moves him, and it's not a bad thing, obviously. Passive, there's places for passive protagonists, and there's places for active protagonists, and that's understandable. But my issue falls where this is the perfect like spot for an active protagonist. A protagonist is like, all right, I'm gonna go save my dad, and you're gonna come with me. I'm the warrior. Let's do this. And that's a little bit like, he's like, oh well, I'm gonna go save my dad, and like if this prophecy fulfills it, that's whatever. But he just like, he's literally just a follower the entire time. He doesn't lead at all. The only time at the end is the only time where he leads anything, and it's where he thinks he's gonna go die. And even then, he's saved by Ares, which, you know, at least you know, at least the character follows through with what he says, though. That's what I like, you know, about Gregor. He has a plan and he sticks to it, but he doesn't like, the plan is set in motion by other people, you know, like Vicus, which is like the king or whatever. Like he literally puts everything together. Like he gets Rip Red to show up, and he is the one that finds the queen or the king or whatever the cockroach is, and gets them to come with, and he's the one that like gets the spinners to not kill Gregor, because earlier in the story Gregor gets captured by the spinners, and the only reason that he didn't die is because he mentioned Vicus' name, which, you know, there's that. And so it's just, he's very passive, like nothing, he's not doing anything to push the plot forward. He's just following along with what other people want him to do, which isn't bad. Like I said, it's just not what I like in a protagonist. That's really all. But yeah, so I give the story a 7 out of 10. I think it's, if you have, I mean, as an adult, I wouldn't recommend it, right? Cause it's a very easy read. I thought the story was going to be much longer than it was, which is why I pushed it off for so long. Like I bought the book and I had it on my iBooks, and I was reading it. I read it a little bit and I was like, yeah, I'll get to it, you know, wishy-washy about it. But when I sat down, I was like, I'm just going to read it and I'm going to finish it so I can make this video and tell people how I feel about it. I got through the book in like a couple days. Like I assumed it was going to be longer. I assumed that, I mean, maybe it was because I didn't dislike it that I could just read through it like that. But it's a lot of the story for me isn't very memorable. Like the transitions between like two places really are kind of whatever for me. So like when they go from the main city hub to the cockroaches, the walk between that, nah, it's whatever. When they have to, like, the big part of it is not smelling like the overland, so they have to like clean a bunch, or they have to get covered in like sewage, like gross liquid or whatever, and it's like, you know, it's whatever, you know, this just is what it is, you know. And it's not bad. If you have a younger person though, I think it'd be a good read. I can see it as like one of those books like Percy Jackson was for me, right? When I was younger and I read Percy Jackson for the first time, I thought this is as good as reading can get, and it's so good. And I read it through all of the books and I absolutely loved it. But this was when I was younger, right? I've reread Percy Jackson since then. And since then, it's not held up to the best standards that I have, but it's still there and it brings the nostalgia, right? So if you have like a younger brother or younger sister, right, that's like 10 or 11, 12, literally the perfect age gap. I would give this book to them and be like, you'd love this. Because a lot of times they would. And I think it's a very good book written for that age group. Because it's not difficult to read and the words aren't very hard. It's pretty easy. And I can get by an easy book to read, right? But it's nothing like Bernstein Bears, right? It's not like a child's book. It's meant for, you know, more mature like teens, right? Like preteen teenager, right? So like a 14-year-old to like an 11-year-old. I could see in that age group people loving this book, and I'm just not there, you know. And that's understandable. And I would like to thank everyone for watching this video. And I understand if this isn't the review you wanted, but here I am. If you want me to review another book, let me know. I will pick it up and I will read it. And, you know, I read all your comments. I respond to all your comments, and I thank every single person that comments. Have a great rest of your day, and I truly enjoy reading. So if you have something that you would want me to read and you think that I would enjoy, let me know, and I will read it. Have a great day, and leave a like if you liked it, leave a dislike if you didn't, and a comment either way telling me how I did. Thank you very much. Have a good day.